All righty. We are here with Jeanne McPhillips, and I got to tell you, I am fired up here today because we're going to get into a topic that is, a little bit off book in terms of what we've talked about here in the show. If you've been listening, we're all about branding and growing your coaching practice. And one of the things that I like to talk about is speaking. And in this particular situation, we're going to talk about online summits. Okay. And I know you said that you've put together several, you brought speakers in like just out of the wazoo in terms of all this work and doing all the different summits. So I am really excited to kind of hear your perspective of what you look for in a speaker, what's kind of a good thing, maybe not so much. I know we're also going to talk a little bit about if you're thinking about putting on your own summit as well. So thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Awesome.
This
Awesome.
is
Awesome.
cool.
Well,
Happy to be
well,
here. Yeah, I'd love to help and coach anyone who is thinking about doing the online summit, which, by the way, not for the faint of heart. But then
right.
again, this business in general is not for the faint of heart, right? Speaking.
Correct twice.
So,
Correct twice.
I mean, it's probably won't even be all that for people. But yeah, I'd love
Right.
to shed some light on
Awesome.
the process and what it brings, what value it brings to your branding and your business.
Awesome. Well, let's start off with that. I know the numbers that I've got is that over a 6 month period, you've done what did you bring in? Like 25 or 50 speakers or something like that? What's the exact credential / number? I know it's big. I just don't remember what it is.
It's huge. No. Okay. So the first one I did 21 speakers.
Right.
Okay. Over a 3-week period. So it was
Right.
one speaker per day.
That's
And
right.
the second one, which was within the 6 month time period, as you mentioned, I tried a different format. I tried 7 speakers in 7 days, which is a week.
Okay.
So I wanted to, I launch, iterate, right? That's what we
Right.
do. So
Right.
that's why I did it that way. It was the first one was a huge undertaking. So what I would say, the number one thing I would say to people is be sure that you are planning enough time to do the due diligence and the planning and the organizing that you mentioned earlier, the
Right.
organization. Super
Right.
important to get that and give yourself enough time, because otherwise you run into issues, you run into tech issues, you run into issues with your speakers and all these things. And so you want to have some cushion in there to make sure that you do the best you can do. There's always going to be something, but make sure you have enough time. So for example, I did my summit in November and December, like right after Thanksgiving, going into Christmas.
Okay.
So it was like, 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I started the process in September.
Okay.
So that's September, October, November, almost 3 months.
Right.
I would have given myself a few more weeks. Also, I have another full-time job. So I'm a coach. I'm a creative coach for female entrepreneurs in the creative industry, artists and designers.
Right.
And I'm also a full-time professor.
Okay.
So, you have time because you have time to run your business, but also you're putting this together, which is
Yeah, it's an undertaking. It's definitely so. So the first tip right off the bat, if you're thinking about maybe starting or doing your own summit, which some people are, it's what I heard is give yourself a little bit of, runway, okay, in terms of being able to get this thing organized. And then the second point is actually that it sounds like there's a high organizational factor, and making sure, because I'm doing a summit myself. I'm speaking on one. It's not a summit, it's an online conference, a virtual conference, and it's actually coming up next week. But, and I think she only has like 5 or 6 speakers, but it's all on one day. You know what I mean?
Cakewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
she,
that's what I was going to say to you. So to talk about on this
okay,
episode.
go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
So in terms of format, right?
Yeah.
So you're speaking on a specific format. So it's called a summit, a conference. People have different
Right.
terminology for it, however they want to spin it with their brand. It still requires, no matter what the amount of speakers is, it still requires, I think there's 3 components of planning for this thing, or 3 ways
Okay.
that you have 3 phases, okay?
Okay.
before launch. The first phase is branding and planning.
Okay.
So what is your why? Why are you doing this? What are your goals and objectives? What are you trying to achieve with this
Okay.
summit? Thinking about how you're going to brand it. What's your tagline going to be? What's your hook going to be?
Right.
And also thinking about the format.
Right.
So you want to do one day. Do you want to do it on one day? Do you want to do it, which could be live, or do you want to have it pre-recorded? That's the route I chose because
Okay.
I was freaking out about making sure people were going to be there,
Right.
all in
Right.
one day. And I figured it would be easier to plan it. And so it just depends, it just depends
Okay.
what the theme is, what the timing is. So you have to decide all those things, first. That's in the planning phase, and then put together a project plan for yourself,
Right.
just like you would
Right.
in any business endeavor. A
Right.
time, a project management, and whatever tools you use for that. So,
Okay.
I mean, I use simple tools like Google Drive,
Right.
Sheets.
Right. Right.
Okay. And then also I would say in that phase, decide whether or not you're going to hire a VA, because a VA can make
Interesting.
in the world.
That is such a great point, because I think what happens is, and that actually might be, as my mom says, a life lesson, right? Like that might be a business life lesson.
Love you,
Get
Mom.
your, right. That might be a business life lesson, because that's something where I think a lot of times we can get bogged down in all of these different details, with running yours business, that it can be, we were talking about this before the show, talking about how I'm, with my podcast, I took a little hiatus. And part of it was I didn't have the right tools. Part of it was the right tools weren't available. Part of it, because that we're doing more AI, more clip-based video software. Part of it was the tools weren't available. Part of it was I didn't have the right tools. Part of it was maybe I didn't have the right approach. So there's a lot parts of it. You know what I mean? But part of it also is, I haven't gotten a VA to do it now, but I've got somebody who's going to do it in a few weeks to be able to do some of this stuff. You know what I mean? But great point. Great point. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit, because I want to get this part in as well, which is we have some would-be speakers who might want to be coming on and doing like a summit or whatever. As an organizer, what were you looking for out of a potential speaker when you were kind of vetting these folks?
Okay. So that's a great segue, because that was part 2. Remember I said there's 3 phases.
Yeah.
Part 2 is speakers. So first of all, when you think about your in the first phase, you're thinking about, what is my tagline? What is my theme? What is my niche? What am I trying to do? So mine was called
Right.
Boss Like a Queen, right?
Okay.
It's called
Okay.
Boss Like a Queen because it was all about female empowerment, and I coach female entrepreneurs. So it
Okay.
was aligned with what I'm doing. And I'm just using
Work
mine
that.
as an example.
Right.
So speakers need to be in that space. So
Right.
what I'm looking for in speakers are speakers that are badass women that
Right.
have achieved something like unbelievable in their lives. Now, it doesn't have to be, complete miracles, but something
Right.
people can resonate with. And I looked
Right.
at different areas in people's lives that you want to boss up, right? Relationship,
Right.
family, career, health,
Right.
wellness,
Right.
spirituality. So I had all of
Right.
these elements. So I was looking for speakers that could, speak on those topics. Now, when it comes
Okay.
to requirements specifically, what do they need to be? Well, you need to vet them to make sure that they have, their assets are tight,
Right.
website, socials, because the point is, for me, my goal was to build my email list
Okay.
and brand awareness. So if the speakers are going to, the part of the deal is the speakers promote your summit,
Right.
right?
Right.
Thing to help all these people. It's social media, like it's amplification. You have all
Right.
these people and they go to their people. So the email list that they must have an email list, and they must have a substantial email list. Otherwise,
Okay.
math doesn't work to build
Right.
an email list. Now, again, it depends on what your goals and objectives are. For me, I was trying to build my email list, and I needed to have people that had at least 5,000 people on their email.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
the guideline. Okay,
That was, let me just stop you there for a second. So far, what I've heard is a few criteria, all of which are fine. I've heard the email just recently, okay, and you had a number. Yours was 5K, not a problem. Others are going to be different, but that's fine. What I also kind of implied was a willingness to kind of pitch in, right? Like for them to be able to do that. And then here's the third one that I also heard was this idea of having your assets in place. So that's having one of the things I talk a lot about. I don't know if I've talked about it on the show as much. I do it maybe we have a mastermind, a speakers mastermind, Speak to Earn, and it's a monthly virtual group of speakers and people who are looking to do podcasts, virtuals, things like that. And I might have mentioned this in the education format, where a big part of getting gigs is giving people the impression and the trust factor that you are going to be reliable and good. And I think that, having a web page goes a long way towards that. Obviously, having some brand credibility in terms of maybe like, I'm just talking podcast interviews or testimonials or something like that goes a long way. And what I'm hearing you say is, definitely that's for you when you're vetting these people. Sally come lately with her little ghetto deal isn't really going to be the way to go versus somebody who's a little bit more buttoned up and has gotten, what you need to do. And that's probably before you even meet these people.
Yeah, I mean, so this is true because you're asking them. But part of the summit, the formula that I followed is they're your partners. So you're putting this together, you're putting on a show for them to get exposure, and you're promoting the hell out of it. Okay, we haven't talked about that yet, but at the same time, you're asking them to promote the summit so that they go out to their community, which is not something that people want to do. Okay, they don't feel like they want to burden their community. Well, I say that's if that's what they say, if they're not comfortable, then they're not for you, at least in my formula.
I agree.
So this is a community effort, right? It's like,
I agree.
And there's enough to go around and all that.
Right.
And so one thing that I had to do, one thing that was recommended that I do, and I did, was a speaker agreement where they, you talk to them in the agreement about what their responsibilities are going to be. They're going to go out to and that, right? They're going to promote for you. Whether or not they do it, that's another story. I can talk about that later when we talk about best practices and what I did and didn't do. But that is a guideline that you should really have. And then what else did you want to know about? So speakers in general. So the second phase is like finding them, doing the research, vetting them.
Right.
All right. Having the conversation, telling them about what it is. And then
so let me stop you there for another second, if you don't mind, because you brought up another good point, having the conversation. When you're talking to these speakers, what is it? Do you have something specific that you're looking for, or is it an overall vibe? Like, what are you looking for when you're talking to a would-be speaker for a summit?
Well, so you obviously there's a lot of outreach that you have to do. I mean, I reached out to 100 speakers to get 21.
Okay.
So a lot of them are busy, or most of it, the time that I couldn't get people to do, people didn't respond, it was because they were busy or they were too big or whatever. They weren't going to do something for free. Okay, like I'm not going to pay people to be on a summit because
not for an online summit. No.
No, it's not, that's not part of the program, but a lot of people want to be paid, which I understand. I respect that, but that's not the model that I was going on. Right.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So then anyway, so there's all this outreach, email, social media, where you find people. There's a lot of different ways to find them and research. If you want me to go into that, I could. But in general, when you get on the phone or Zoom, I tried to do Zoom.
Okay.
So that we could have, a connection.
Right. Little dialogue
going on. And yes, it's definitely, they want to know what it's all about. They want to understand what you're trying to do, who you are. So your energy has to be like so high because you're selling your concept, your program. Like, what are you going to do for them? And why should they spend their time on it? And so that part, I don't know, that came really easy for me because I have a high energy level anyway, and I connect with people really well. And my concept, girl power, boss up like a queen, they loved it. Everyone
Right,
loved it. They were like,
right,
this is so cool. And I
right,
down and like the whole thing. So
right.
I didn't have any trouble getting people to say yes once I got them on the Zoom. What I
Okay.
had trouble with was saying no to people if they didn't have the requirements.
So, like when you were on the phone with the speakers, from the speaker perspective, what is it that you were looking for? Like you were looking for, so like it's a half-hour call. What are you looking for? Like what are you looking for?
I'm looking to hear what they represent, what their stories are. I have to hear
Okay.
that, like how did they come to do what they're doing. So for example, I had a woman who her business is called Peak Parenting Performance.
Okay.
And she has this whole backstory about how she's part of this Jewish community and she
Okay.
excommunicated from it because I can't even remember why, but
Yeah.
had all these kids and she was part of this community and she found herself all alone.
Right.
And so it was about, she has this whole thing that helped her heal and parenting.
Right.
Wants people to understand what it means to be parenting, what it means to
Okay.
be a parent before they actually become parents. And so she trains.
Okay.
So I had to listen to all that. And to me, that was a killer story. So like it really like
Right.
sent shivers up my spine, the fact that she went through this. And so I touch on this in my stories, like on the summit, like, okay, tell me about your story a little bit. And
Right. Okay.
then that. So
Okay.
what value are you going to add to my customers, to my audience? What value
There
are you
we
going to add
go.
to the audience?
Okay, there we go. So it's if I'm a would-be speaker looking to try to get into a summit, what I'm hearing you say is a few things. I'm hearing you say that definitely have a good story, definitely have a good story that's in alignment with what it is that you're, the potential audience members. Have some buy-in, right? If you're not going to have buy-in, don't do it. Like, just don't. You're wasting everybody's time. If don't do it. Okay, have some buy-in. And then also probably a little bit of an energetic factor, I'm thinking as well. Like if you're talking about somebody who's speaking, especially with Zoom, I know when I go and talk to, a would-be conference and I'm, trying to get booked, right? I'll go in and talk. I usually wind up, they usually want to talk with you before they actually sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. Okay. So like if like I'm doing a conference at the end of the month and I'm actually doing two presentations at that particular conference at the end of the month. And, you got to talk to these people and you get through the first iteration of the topic submission and stuff like that. But then if I'm coming in there as Johnny Low Energy, okay, I'm not sure I'm winning a lot of games with that. Okay. Because it doesn't give a sense of confidence to you, I would imagine, as the organizer, because what you're thinking, I would think, is can this person energize the crowd in a manner that's going to make them feel good and be consistent with my business goals?
That's right. They have to inspire your audience. That's in the summit model. They have to inspire your audience so that they take action somehow,
Right,
right?
right,
Everyone has a something that they're trying to sell or
right,
promote. And
right,
so that's important to know too. Like, what do you have? What can we help
right,
promote in the summit
right.
promotion? What can we help you talk about? What's your program? What's your point of view? Right? As
Okay.
speakers, always you need a point of view.
Okay. Okay. See, this is good stuff because I think a lot of times, and we could spend hours on this. It's funny because we were talking beforehand. I was saying, one of the things I'm doing with my podcast is really trying to keep the interviews a little bit in like in a parameters. Otherwise, in the past, I'll sit on the phone for an hour. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's too much. But this is really good. This is good because I think, and I'll ask you for one more point here in a second. But I think what I'm also hearing, I love that point that you're making. And the point that I want to make real quick on that is I think as coaches, we come in this discussion as like, bland. Okay. We come into this as like, I don't want to insult. I don't want to affront. I don't want to, I'm trying to think of other words. I don't want to offend. It,
Neutral. So
Yeah, right. Thank you. I'm trying to come into this idea of neutrality. And I think that, a lot of times where we make our mistake is we do that. And, here in the United States, and not to get into it, but we're getting ready to have a pretty important election coming up. And, you've got one party who is talking about what the past is like, and we need to go back to the past. You have another party who's talking about the vision for the future and where they want to go in the future. And I think at the end of the day, it's as a speaker, it's what can you do to show energy about the future, about where you're trying to go, and letting these other people know, because that's what, back to the analogy, that's what builds a coalition. That's what gets people under the tent. That's what gets people energized. That's what gets people wanting to vote. That's what gets people wanting to have you on your summit. It's not, and my mom talks about this a lot, actually. She talks about everybody likes a person with a good point of view, a strong point of view. You know what I mean? So I guess my takeaway point is, and I got one more question for you, but my takeaway point is come in there with a point of view, to your point, come in there strong, to maybe my point, and come in there with something that is a vision for the future of where you want this audience to be. Back to the analogy, okay? And what your vision is for where this audience can be as a result of your talk, and I think that that's probably really powerful. Let me ask you another question, and we'll finish up on this because I think it's super important. Is when you're doing these summits, like we're talking about putting one on, we're talking about the speakers doing it and things like that. You mentioned a little bit about, and I've mentioned this as well, you talked about a VA, you talked about, having a list of 5,000, things like that. What if we have a listener here who doesn't have a list of 5,000? Maybe they're trying to get on, I don't know, a summit here, there, or everywhere. Do you have a way for them to kind of work around that a little bit? And I know you're a doctor, not a miracle worker, but maybe you can give us a little bit of a thought on what somebody whose list is a little bit less than might be able to do.
Okay, so first of all, let's just say the email list is the most difficult thing to build.
Right.
In my opinion, as a business owner. I mean,
right.
It's super hard, and especially when you're first starting out. And so I empathize, okay, with that. That's why I did this, so that I could build my list.
Right. So you can build your own list, right?
Yeah, and so I I think that one of the mistakes I made was having people on the summit that didn't have the list. So
okay.
What does that do?
Okay.
It doesn't send your reach out the way
that's what you need to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. However, I did create unbelievable connections with these women.
Okay. Okay.
And maybe they didn't have a list, but they had strong social media presence. So they media.
Okay.
Those are the workarounds. And or what is not make them a featured speaker, but make them maybe a bonus speaker on your summit. And you can give away gifts. So one thing I didn't get into here, there's too much to get into, but how do you build the opt-in page and the landing page?
Right.
Analytics, good stuff. And you build an offer, and you build a VIP offer.
Right.
There's ways to work in people if they want to give a gift. Every speaker, that's the other thing I forgot to mention in the speaker requirements. They have to give a gift, which could just be a video or a ticket to one of their classes, or something not going to cost them a lot of money or time.
Right.
In the toolbox, but will be valuable to the audience.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry about it if you don't have the list. This is the struggle. This is the struggle is real. This is
right.
So I would say still go for it. I mean,
okay.
So anyway, for me, they told me that in the beginning, you have to have this list. And if they don't have the list, don't include them. And I said, I softened and I let that I thought had a great story and that were valuable and that were going to bring a lot of value to the audience. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
That'll be fine. We won't worry about it. So part of it too is, and then I'll ask you how these people can get in touch with you, because this was some really, really good stuff. Part of it sounds like too, is the idea of making sure that they can, if you're a speaker going on and maybe you don't have the requisite list, have a conversation about your social media, make a case around how you can do some things that will still get to the bottom line. Maybe even be open to being a bonus point. Maybe you make that suggestion to the would-be summit provider. So like there's different things. Go in there with a story. What is it that you can do? Make a case. Before, you don't have the 5K or the 3K. Build a case, make a case, have a story, talk about what you can do to get after it a little bit and get some boots on the ground and moving forward. I love that. I love that. I got to tell you, we could talk about this forever. Tell these guys how it is they can find you just with this little bit. I mean, if people weren't taking notes, I don't know what they've been doing because this is some good stuff. Where can they find you? Where can they find you?
Okay, just one last note before I
tell. Oh, yeah, of course. I'm not trying to rush you. I'm sorry.
I just want to finish the thought because I said there were 3 phases and I just want to end on that, give you my info. Yeah. So the first phase is your planning and branding. Second phase and the why. The second phase is the speaker due diligence and outreach and all that. And the third phase is running the summit. So running and the promotion and everything you have to do. Okay. No, I appreciate that. We should have you come back. We'll talk about that some more. Where can these guys find you? All right. So my website is, as you can see behind me, supergirls.com with 2 L's, second L for love. That is my website. You can reach me there at Supergirls, same spelling on Insta.
Okay.
LinkedIn, I'm Jeanne McPhillips. You can see that right there on the screen. And there's no other Jeanne McPhillips. It spells it the same way. So that's that. So right now, just a little plug because Brian said I could.
I totally can. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm doing a really crazy promotion right now called the Power Partner Program. And for a crazy discounted price, having an accountability partner in your business is super important. And doing it on, being a solopreneur is really hard. You need a partner. You need someone that's going to keep you in line. Anyway, as coaches, we do that for people, right? That's one of the things that we do. So I'm running a Power Partner program right now through the end of the year. If you go to my website, it'll pop up. You can sign up, get a call. We'll hook up a call and talk about it more. Thank you, Brian, for letting me come onto your amazing show. I love how you wordsmith everything. Like in, chewable nuggets. It's the best.
Well, like I said, we'll have to have you back. This was some really good stuff. One of the learnings that I did was if I didn't keep it in a structure, I would go on for an hour and a half. And that's just been less successful. So we'll have you back. We'll talk more and delve deeper into this. But I think these guys got enough to get them going. If you're a speaker and you're trying to get going on these summits, I think you're in really, really good shape. So I really, really appreciate it. This is awesome, Jeanne. This was terrific. Thank you for your time. And guys, I hope you were taking notes. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.